सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
So we will chant verse number 64. So please unmute yourself. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ragadvesha Viyuktaistu Vishayanindriyaishcharan Atmavashair Vidheyatma Prasadam Adhigacchati. Okay. So at the outset, let me welcome some of the students from the last TTC at Naya Dam. So they'll find that there's a lot of difference in the teaching, and I'm sure you'll quickly come up to speed. So I'm just muting y'all while. All right. Now look at the words Raga, Dvesha, Vyuktaihi. So that is the breakup of the first compound word. Raga, Dvesha, Vyuktaihi. Then Vishayan. The na has a halant, so Vishayan. Indriyaihi, Charan. That is the breakup of the second word. Vishayan, Indriyayi, Charan. Then Atma Vashaihi, Vidheyatma, Prasadam, Adhigacchati. So Raga, Dvesha, Vyuktaihi, Tu, Vishayan, Indriyaihi, Charan, Atma Vashaihi, Vidheyatma, Prasadam, Adhigacchati. Those are the breakup of the words. And the Anvaya, the sentence formation will be Raga Dvesha Vyuktaihi tu Atma Vashaihi Indriyaihi Vishayan Charan, comma. Raga Dvesha Vyuktaihi tu Atma Vashaihi Indriyaihi Vishayan Charan, comma. Vidheya Atma Prasadam Adhigacchati, full stop. So Raga Dvesha Vyuktaihi. Vyuktam means free from. Yuktam is connected to. Vyuktam is free from. So Raga Dvesha Vyuktaihi, free from Raga and Dvesha, free from attachment and hatred. Atma Vashaihi. So Vashai is generally taken as being under the influence of or being influenced by. So Atma Vashaihi, being guided by the intellect. So Atma here is intellect, not Satchit Ananda Atma, carefully to be noted. Atma Vashaihi means guided by the Buddhi, intellect. And Indriyahi. So this intellect is guided, the Indriyas are guided by the intellect. They are not moving as they wish. And Vishayan Charan. Vishayan Charan is moving among the sense objects. Vishayan is sense objects. Charan is moving. So this person is free from Raga Dvesha. His intellect is guiding the sense organs. And with this discipline, may I request whoever it is not to unmute themselves, please. It's disturbing the recording. So please don't unmute yourself unless absolutely necessary and you want to ask a question. So Vishayan among the objects, charan, moving. Then vidhey atma. So here again, atma here is not Satchitananda Atma. Atma here is the mind. Vidheya means disciplined. So atma videya, the mind who is disciplined. Prasadam adhigacchati, attains shantim. Prasadam is shantim. Okay, now let's look at it in more detail. So the sentence itself is whereas vidhay atma, the one whose mind is controlled, what does he do? Vishayan charan, he moves around in the world of objects, among the sense objects. And what is his status? Indriyaihi atma vashaihi. His indriyas, sense organs, are under the control of his intellect, and therefore raga dvesha viyuktaihi, he is free from likes and dislikes. Such a person, even though he is moving around among the sense objects, adhigacchati prasadam, he attains tranquility, he attains peace of mind. So we saw in the last few verses that Krishna was prescribing various sadhana, various disciplines for moksha. And do you remember what was the root cause of all the problems? That was there in the 62nd verse. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha. The person, he thinks again and again about objects, sense objects. And that is the main problem. Repeated thinking about the sense objects is the main problem. And therefore, Krishna is coming back to the question of Indriya Nigraha, the sense control. Indriya Nigraha, sense control once again. So he says, Indriyahi Vishayan Charan. This person is moving along among the sense objects. So obviously, in this world, when we go out, when we interact, it is not possible for us to completely close down or shut down all the indriyas. All the sense organs cannot be shut down because eyes are there, ears are there, nose are there. Eyes at least you can shut. But the nose is open all the time, the ears are open all the time. And therefore, you cannot really shut the sense organs down. But what is important is it should be regulated, not suppressed. So what we are meaning is that any operation of the indriyas, any operation of the sense organs can be under the influence of two forces. So one is raga dvesha. Your sense organs can be completely influenced by raga dvesha. And this kind of behavior is called swabhavika pravrittihi. It's also called prakrita pravrittihi. Two technical words in Shastram. Pravrittihi means activity. Swabhavika means according to your own swabhava, your own nature. Prakritaha from the word prakritihi. Prakriti also means your own nature. So prakritaha pravrittihi, which is according to the nature which you have. So uncontrolled by any intellectual input, if you are behaving exactly according to your nature, then you are behaving according to your raga dvesha. And therefore, that is one way that sensory operations can be governed. Okay. And the other force is shastric teaching. Your sensory operations can be governed by shastric teaching. This is shastriya pravrittihi, also called samskrita pravrittihi. And here, indriya nigraha, the restraint of the sense organs, means not the first type, not swabhavika pravrittihi, but it means shastriya pravrittihi, governed by the rules of the shastra. And therefore he says raga dvesha viyuktaihi. See, we must note that when he says raga dvesha viyuktaihi, he is not saying that the indriyas have to be governed. The indriyas have neither raga nor dvesha, right? Very important point. A control of sense organs ultimately does not mean control of the sense organs, because sense organs have got neither raga nor dvesha. Where do the raga and dvesha belong to? They belong to the mind. So even though your sense organs are basically only instruments, the eyes give you certain inputs, the ears give you inputs, the nose gives you inputs, the sense of touch gives you input, sense of taste gives you input. These are free from raga and dvesha. But the raga and dvesha are based upon the inputs and the processing center, the mind. That mind creates the raga or dvesha. And mind influences the sense organs. And therefore, when we say that my indriya should be free from raga and dvesha, we are saying that my sense organs, my indriyas, should be free from the influence of raga dvesha. Right? And if my sense organs has to be free from the influence of raga dvesha, they have to be free from likes and dislikes. And the likes and dislikes, the raga dvesha, they belong to the mind, right? But the mind, can it ever be free from likes and dislikes? No, the mind will never be free from likes and dislikes. So the mind has always to be under the control of the intellect. So Krishna is saying here that your mind will have raga dvesha. You be alert to ensure that that influence of raga dvesha doesn't lead to any activity. Right? Your mind will have raga dvesha, but we should be alert to ensure that whatever activity we do, whatever karma we do, that karma is under the influence of the intellect alone, keeping the raga dvesha to one side. And we must remember that raga and dvesha both are based on error. Right? Raga is the attachment, is the misconception that this person or this object towards whom I'm having the raga will be a source of joy to me. So that Vedanta says that is a very big misconception. And dvesha, the hatred, is again because of a misconception that this person or this object towards whom I have dvesha will be a source of sorrow to me. Both are misconceptions. And never allow that misconception to be developed, right? For example, when I look at a rose, I should appreciate the rose. It's beautiful. It's a part of the Ishvara Srishti. It's part of God's creation. And the rose is beautiful where it is. That is the correct attitude. But if I want to cut that rose and take it and put it in my flower pot at home, then I have developed raga towards that rose. I want that rose. That rose will look beautiful in my house. Similarly, I want this person in my life to be like this or to be not like this. This is all because of raga dvesha. So Krishna is saying that mind which has raga dvesha, make sure that mind is under the control of the intellect. Never allow your sense organs to be influenced by those raga dvesha. Let the sense organs be addiction free. And therefore raga viyuktaihi, dvesha viyuktaihi. Should be free of raga and should be free of dvesha. But Shankara in his commentary himself says that sense organs operate predominantly under the influence of raga dvesha. Then how is it possible for me to be, for my sense organs to be free of them, to be free of raga dvesha? Therefore Krishna says, Atma Vashaihi. Let the sense organs be guided not by the mind, not by the manas, but by the Atma. The Atma here, as I said, is Buddhihi, is the intellect. And Vashai means under the control of. So the sense organs should be operating, should be allowed to operate by you only under the control of your intellect. So operate the sense organs properly and make sure that they obey the command of the intellect, right? And that is not as easy as it sounds. For example, talk about alcohol, right? I have read about all the evils of alcohol. I have understood it. And it's because I'm an intelligent person, I know that taking alcohol is bad for me, bad for my health. I also know that Shastram, the scriptures prohibit the intake of alcohol. I also know that the doctors tell me that alcohol is not good for you. And then the net result of all this should be that my intellect is in control, and therefore I should have the ability never to touch alcohol. But do I have the first time, remember the first time we give in to a temptation, it is very easy to say no. But they say that temptations are like Vali, Sugriva and Vali. What was the boon given to Vali? Does anybody know? Why was Vali a warrior impossible to beat?
Yes, the
Just
boon
to get
was that. Okay,
strength.
carry on.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the boon was that whosoever he will fight, half the strength of that person will go to Bali.
Exactly. So the boon was that whoever fought with
The power
Vali,
of his opponent.
the 50% of the power of the opponent would be going to Vali. And therefore, Vali is already a strong person. And then 50% of the opponent's power came to him. So obviously, Vali would win every time. And temptation is like that only. 50% of your strength goes to the temptation. And therefore, the first time that you face temptation, is easy to say no. But the second time, the temptation is like Vali. It becomes more powerful and we become weaker. And the third time, it becomes even more powerful. And soon I am not able to say no to the temptation at all. And therefore, I should be able to say no first time and follow it. And follow it up every single time with that same amount of commitment. This is the life of mastery. This is what is called Atma Vashai Vidheyatma. Vidheyatma, the person who is in absolute control of himself, self-disciplined person. So let all our activities should be guided by Shastra, at least in the initial stages. Why? Because slowly, our intellect will become strong enough to be free of the influence of emotions. How will it become strong enough? By regular study of the Shastra. To make this intellect strong, we need the Shastram as a mother who feeds us regular Shastric advice, regular Atmagyanam, and slowly, over a period of time, we will find that our buddhi becomes extremely strong. And how to do that? When we are faced with any temptation, it's all good for talking, right? But how to practically implement? So whenever I come across any situation where I'm strongly tempted to do something, I should ask myself a few questions. First and foremost, is this activity what I am going to do? Is it permitted by Shastra? Is it permitted by scripture? And secondly, we can say, is the activity such that it is unavoidable for me to continue living? If the answer is no, in either case, we should avoid the action. And we can also ask many other questions, is it good? Is it necessary? Is it kind? You can ask all that. And that's why Krishna says, Atma Vashaihi, the ability to keep my mind under control. And one good way of knowing whether I have got Atma Vashaihi is that when the spouse is nagging you, do I have the ability to tell my tongue to keep silent? When your mind is wanting to scream at the wife, at the husband, at the children, will the tongue obey you? Will the indriya obey you? Remember, the mind is got raga dvesha right now because somebody is nagging you. But in the presence of that raga dvesha of the mind, does my intellect have the strength to tell my tongue, keep quiet? So when the buddhi commands, the indriyas should obey. You start with that, and later on when the buddhi commands, the mind should also obey. This is the prime requirement of a Bhagavad Gita student. No excuses are permitted. Continued violation of such rules has a very major punishment, the loss of your Jivan Mukti status. And therefore Krishna says, Atma Vashaihi Vidheyatma. Very important phrase. A mind which always obeys the intellect. And since the mind obeys the intellect, and the mind is the supervisor of the indriyas will also automatically obey the intellect. When the intellect is the boss, life is a picnic. When the mind is the boss, life will be a battle all the time. And such a person, prasadam adhigacchati. A person whose mind is under control of his intellect, for him, there is no more violent disturbance in the mind. And this ability to sense when the mind is about to get disturbed, that comes with the study of Vedanta. A Vedantic student who has been studying the Shastram for some time, the moment the slightest possibility of disturbance in the mind occurs, the Vedantin will sense it. That red light will begin to burn and he can take necessary steps. If he is in the discussion, he can say, okay, let us stop the discussion right now. Or he can tell the other person that, look, I am getting upset and therefore I don't want to continue the discussion. Or the other person is angry, he can say, look, you are very angry and I don't want to increase your anger. So let us park this topic now and we will discuss tomorrow or the day after or whenever. And if you can do this, you will find that no situation ever goes out of hand. And one must always remember that arguments are highly avoidable. And the more lengthy the argument, the more involved the argument, the more passionate you are about the subject of the argument, the more time it takes to compose your mind. And the easier it is to lose your balance. And therefore, a Vedantic student, a Bhagavad Gita student, has to be constantly alert to avoid unnecessary argument or debates. And therefore, he says, prasadam adhigacchati. So prasadam is basically, comes from the word prasada, which means peacefulness, shantihi, prasannata. All these things come from Bhagavan. And that is why whenever something is given from Bhagavan, we call it prasadam. Because when we take something from the Lord, we feel a sense of peace. And therefore, indirectly, all this is called prasadam. The word prasadam comes from the Sanskrit dhatu, the root, sad. Sad dhatu is to be peaceful, means to be peaceful, to become tranquil. And therefore, we have the word prasidati, to be pleased, to be satisfied, to be calm. And prasada is the abstract noun of that dhatu. So, calmness of mind. And for the Vedantic student, it's very important to avoid any mental turbulence, because the calm and peaceful mind, which has no disturbances, is very important for the assimilation of this knowledge. And we can analyze it at all the levels, at all the Panchakosha levels also, right? So this prasadam adhigacchati. Adhigacchati goes towards or approaches or obtains prasadam. This prasadam is what? It's freedom from stress at Annamaya Kosha level. The physical level, there is no stress. At Pranamaya Kosha level, at the sensory level, there is free from stress. At the Manomaya Kosha level, at the mental level, he is free from stress. At the Vijnanamaya Kosha level, at the intellectual level, he is free from stress. What about at the Karna Shariram level? What about the Karna Shariram level?
There's no stress.
There is no stress already.
Karna Shariram level is anyway free of stress, right? It is Karna Shariram. So at the first 4 koshas, you will be free of stress. You have to examine yourself in this manner. And such a stress-free personality has a particular name in Sanskrit, in the scriptures. It is called anayasaha. Ayasa means the effort, the tension. Anayasaha means free of tension. And in his commentary over here, for this verse, Shankara's commentaries have some very interesting points, and therefore I'm bringing those interesting. We are not doing the entire Shankara Bhashyam because it's too complicated and requires an extremely good hold over Sanskrit grammar. So we're not doing that, but to give you the taste of Shankara, I'm occasionally bringing in some of his comments. So here in this Bhashyam on this verse, Shankara adds, he says, prasade sati. Supposing this person has got prasadam. Prasade sati means having got prasadam, having got this peace. Kim syat, what is the big deal? So what? Shankara says, if he got prasadam, so what? What is the big deal about achieving this stress-free state? So here there is an implication that this anayasaha, this state of being stress-free, can be taken as an object, can be taken as an objective by itself, right? And if you look at all therapeutic processes, all therapy today, CBT and such stuff, the aim of therapy is to achieve this temporary peace, anayasaha, the peacefulness, which is a temporary feature. All these hundreds of stress management courses which are existing, everybody is seeking what? Peace of mind. Right? So we are not, okay, we are not running this down. Like, we are not saying it's a bad thing. It's a valid goal for a person who is in the world. Peaceful mind is always very good. But for a Vedantic seeker, for a Vedantic sadhaka, by Shankara says, prasade sati kim syat. So what? What Shankara means is that what is the point of this peaceful mind if there is no further objective? Like, he's saying that the objective of the Bhagavad Gita, of Lord Krishna's teaching, is not just an achievement of the peaceful mind. If you stop there, then you're not understood what the Bhagavad Gita is about. So prasade sati kim syat. What is the purpose of achieving the peaceful mind? The purpose of achieving the peaceful mind is so that they can use it for Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. This is what Shankara is trying to convey. And he says this is what is being conveyed in the next verse. In verse number 65, this is what will be conveyed. So it's a very important verse that we talked about. So before we move on to verse number 65, I'll just open up in case you have any questions.
Acharya ji, Amit this side.
Yeah.
So I have one question, like you were telling that if we do any activities, it should be first guided by Shastra, that understood. Second, we should ask a question that is it unavoidable, correct? Did I understood correctly?
Yeah, is it unavoidable? If it is something which is, not permitted by Shastram, is it unavoidable for my continued living?
So Acharya ji, if we see from that perspective, so anything is unavoidable. There is nothing that is avoidable. Let's say I am going into a negotiation meeting, or I am going into anywhere. So that thing can be unavoidable. Anything is unavoidable. Then
no, you have to connect it to the first question. The first question is it permitted by Shastram? If the question is yes, answer is yes, then you need not go to the second question. You get my point? Supposing your answer is not permitted by Shastram, then you need to go to the second question. Because then you are violating Shastram.
Shastra permits me to do my work. Let's say my work is to negotiate, and Shastra permits me to do.
Then you did not go to the second question at all.
But negotiating beyond a point where it can bring a loss to other is, unavoidable.
Shastra is talking about the fact that you are doing everything in good faith, right?
Okay.
Now, any negotiation involves some sort of benefit to somebody and some loss to the others.
Mm-hmm.
As long as there is no cheating involved, Shastra will not interfere. If the cheating is involved, if you are misrepresenting what you are saying, that is not negotiation, that is cheating. So that is what is being talked about here. If something is permitted by Shastram, there is no problem in doing it. But there are many times, this is a very gray area for us, especially in today's world. And if something is not permitted by Shastram, then we should ask, is it necessary for me to do it so badly that, my whole livelihood will get affected otherwise? My life itself is at stake. Then you have to take further decision based on, the pluses and minuses of that statement, of that particular situation.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So now we look at verse number 65, which we will chant. Please unmute yourself and we will chant. Prasade sarva dukkhanam.
Prasade sarva
dukkhanam
Anirasyopajayate.
Nirasyopajayate
Prasanna chetasayashuhu.
Prasanna chetasayashuhu
Buddhif Paryavatishthate. The follow-up verse from the previous one. And here again, we'll, as before, we'll look at the initial words. So prasade sarva dukkhanam, and that complex word, the fourth word, hanihi asya upajayate. So when you break up the word, the ra after hani, the ra is the joiner because of sandhi. So that goes away and it becomes hanihi. The visarga of hanihi has turned into ra when you combine. So when you break the word, the visarga comes back, the ra turns back into the visarga. So hanihi, then asya, then upajayate. The yo is a combination of a and u. So asya upajayate. Then prasanna chetasaha, hyashuhu is he plus ashu, buddhihi parya vatisthate. That has to be taken as pari avatisthate. Pari avatisthate. When joined together, it becomes parya vatisthate. Okay. Then the anvaya will be prasade. And you can add in brackets if you want. Sati, prasade sati. After having got prasadam, then what? Asya sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate kama. So prasade sati asya sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate kama. Prasanna chetasahi buddhihi ashu pari avatisthate. Pari avatisthate. So prasade sati. Remember, sati is something which you added for clarity's sake. Prasade sati. When this peace of mind has been obtained, has been arrived at, asya sarva dukkhanam hanihi. Asya sarva dukkhanam. All the sorrows of this person, hanihi, are destroyed. And prasanna chetasaha upajayate. There arises prasanna chetasaha, for the person whose mind is clear, whose mind is peaceful. Upajayate. What upajayate means? There arises, there comes. What will come? Buddhihi ashu, self-knowledge. So buddhihi here means atma jnanam. And how does it come? Ashuhu. Quickly it comes. And not only does it come, paryavatishthate, it becomes firm very quickly. So in English, plain English, he is saying that when the mind is tranquil, there is destruction of all pain and sorrow, because the knowledge of a person whose mind is at peace will very soon become well established. Okay. So it's important for one who's studying the Bhagavad Gita to notice, to observe, or to study and keep in mind the sequence of the teaching. What was first talked about? Indriya Nigraha, control over the sense organs. And control over the sense organs was because of Mano Nigraha, because of control over the mind. So control over the mind, control over the sense organs. Because of that, what happens is prasadam takes place. Right? This peace of mind takes place. And this peace of mind has two types of benefits. So that he says over here, sarva dukkhanam hani, destruction of all sorrows. So this samatvam, the balance of mind, will remove all the sorrows, which means samatvam will bring in happiness automatically. We need not bring happiness from the outside world. Okay, this is something which we should drive into our heads, because we have been again and again subject to this kind of conditioning that for me happiness, something has to give me happiness. So that is not necessary. He is saying here that sarva dukkhanam hanihi, the destruction of all sorrows itself will bring in happiness. And that happiness does not have to come from outside the world, because you yourself are the source of the happiness. This disturbance of mind is a sort of a covering, a curtain because of which the happiness which is available within you is not experienced. To experience that happiness, all you have to do is that the source of disturbance has to be removed. And the source of disturbance is all these sorrows. And therefore, sarva dukkhanam hanihi. The balance of mind which comes from these practices, they will destroy the sorrows, and destruction of sorrow itself will make sure that the happiness is there for you. Now, to understand this, there is an old story. There was a dog which was roaming around on the beach. The dog was hungry. On the beach, it came across a very old and dried up bone. It was a beach that was sunlight was there whole day, and there was lying on the beach was a very old little bone. There was no flesh, nothing, it's a dry bone. So the dog picked up the bone and started biting it. After some time of biting, the bone broke, and sharp pieces broke into 2 or 3 sharp pieces. The sharp edge of the bone cut the dog's mouth, inside of the mouth, and the dog started to bleed. And then the dog was very happy because it thought, I am tasting blood, and therefore I have broken the bone and the blood is coming from the bone. Whereas what was the reality? The blood was its own blood. And why we use this example is because Shastra says that every sense object is like the bone. There is no happiness. So the blood is being compared to the happiness, and the bone is compared to the sense object. So Vedanta says, just like the dog did not realize that the blood was its own blood, which was brought out only because of the bone, we also don't realize that all sense objects are only the trigger for bringing out the happiness, which is Atma Ananda. It is already there in me. But the sense object triggers the experience of that happiness. How? That's interesting, because normally, if this happiness is inside me, why don't I experience the happiness? Because my mental disturbances are there. And when I attain or obtain a sense object, that mental disturbance is temporarily removed. And during that temporary removal of mental disturbance, my mind is quiet. In that quiet mind, my internal happiness is experienced. Therefore, these mental disturbances are only blocking the happiness. And by sense control and mind control also, the mental disturbances can be removed. By obtaining a sense object, the mind is quietened down for some time because the mental disturbance is removed. But that is only temporary. But a more permanent removal comes by what? By Indriya Nigraha and Mano Nigraha, by sense control and mind control. So when I do sense control and mind control, when I am able to do that properly, when the mental disturbances are removed, when the mental blocks are removed, this own happiness which I have, that will manifest. And that is what Krishna says here. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanihi bhavati. Once the disturbances are gone, the ananda which is Atma Ananda within me, it manifests. And the word sarva dukkhanam means all sorrows. And we all know by now that sorrows are from 3 sources. So there is Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adhyatmika. So Adi Bhautika is problems which I have because of other people with whom I interact. Adi Daivika is problems which I have because of reasons beyond my control. Like, let us say, earthquakes, a very hot day, a very cold day, natural problems which are beyond my control. And Adhyatmika is a problem which is internal to me. And therefore, this person who is able to handle all these problems, Shankara says, he is a sannyasi. What is a sannyasi? A sannyasi is a person who is abhiman parityagi, who has renounced the identification of himself with his own body, sarva chinta parityagi, who has renounced all worries, and vishesha prarthana parityagi, who does not pray for himself or his family anymore. Once that is there, prasanna chetasaha, the mind is calmer. And when this condition is present, then Krishna says, buddhi parihi avatishthate. So pari here is for para, which is the superior, the Atma Swarupam, the higher one, Atma Swarupam. So he says, buddhi avatishthate. The intellect totally abides in pari, in the Atma Swarupam. Which means that prajna which you have, the knowledge which you have, the Atma Jnanam which you have, where did you get the Atma Jnanam? From Shravanam. And that Shravanam Atma Jnanam became doubtless knowledge because of Mananam. So prajna is doubtless Atma Jnanam, which has been obtained and nourished because of Shravanam and Mananam. When the buddhi parihi avatishthate, when the intellect totally abides, that prajna has been converted into sthita prajna, has become assimilated. The self-knowledge has become well-rooted, it has become assimilated. It is available to you all the time. Okay. Now, just as I'm just going to mute you all without the option to unmute. Okay, so that I muted all without the option to unmute, so that nobody can unmute themselves. Once I finish the discussion, then I'll let you all unmute yourself again. Now, food, when we eat food, we say, I eat food and then I become strong. But that's not really true. Eaten food does not nourish you. That eaten food must be assimilated before it can nourish you. And when assimilating the food, when digesting the food, the stomach needs to be undisturbed. That is why we say that while eating, have a peaceful mind. And immediately afterwards also don't get into furious activity, because the stomach, to do its activity of digestion, it needs to be undisturbed. So here also, when the mind is calm, then only mind is undisturbed, then only that knowledge will get assimilated. That's what's being pointed out here. And a very important point here, though Shankara doesn't make it, there is a sub-commentator. So we have, for the Gita, we have Shankaracharya, who is the Bhashyakara, the commentator, and you have various other people, among whom there is one gentleman called Sureshvacharya, who is a disciple of Shankaracharya. He's a sub-commentator. So he comments on Shankara's commentary. So he says somewhere that when these worries have been removed, there is no need to, go and look for Vedantic thoughts. When disturbances of mind are not there, Vedantic thoughts will automatically occupy the mind. Right now, maybe it is my worries, my preoccupation with my land, with my family, with my job. All that is disturbance of the mind. It is keeping Vedanta from occupying my mind. But once the worries go away, as Krishna says, once Hanihi, they are all destroyed, the worries are gone away, then Paryavatishthate, all the prajna will get assimilated, all the knowledge will get assimilated and digested. It will be converted into Sthita prajna, which we also call Jnana Nishtha. What does it mean when I say I'm Jnana Nishtha? It means that my intellect will entertain the thought Aham Brahma Asmi all the time. Vedantic thoughts will be there in my mind all the time. And therefore, what is the actual teaching? You have to connect this verse to the previous verse. Because of all that has been said in this verse, one should make sure that the Indriyas are free from Ragadvesha. And Shankara in his commentary gives a few guidelines, based on which I had given my first comment. So the first guideline which Shankara gives is it banned by Shastra? If Shastra prohibits, don't do it. Next, if it is not prohibited by Shastra, I mean, if it is prohibited by Shastram, is it necessary for me? If not, then do it. Don't do it. And actually, you can take this one step further and say, even if it is banned by Shastram, is it necessary for me? If it is not necessary, then you should not do it. So very, very tough guideline to follow, but that's the way it is. So I'm just unmuting you all now. I mean, allowing you to unmute yourself. So yeah, any questions you can ask.
Om Raviji,
Yeah.
when you said when all the worries are gone, then the teachings will be in place in the mind. So how, I mean, when do we know that all the worries are gone?
When they are gone, when your thoughts are not about anything other than Vedantic thoughts.
And when you're in that situation, like as you said, you're worried about your family or your work or whatever that is. So there is worry, right?
There is
So,
worry.
so one goes and the next worry comes.
Yes. So where is the question? Where is the place for a Vedantic thought to come? Your Aham Brahmasmi thought has no place as long as you're worried about your boss.
Yes.
Nobody said it was easy.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Om Acharya ji,
Yeah.
a Vedantic thought need not necessarily mean a thought only about Brahman. It is being in that state, right? So whatever is happening in front of us, that will not cause the agitation. The
So that
thought
is
will
not Vedantic thought. Vedantic thought means I am Brahman or everything is Brahman.
So then how do you interact with the world then? I mean, if that's the only
At the
thought
point of interaction with the world, there has to be a double, like normally you see, like we have, let us say how it is. You are identified with your role. You are a mother, you are a daughter, you are an employee, you are a husband, you are a son, you are a father, all these things. And when you come to Vedanta class, then you leave all these outside with your chappals, all these thoughts, hopefully, and then you come and sit and say, Aham Brahmasmi. That is the normal status of a human being. But Shankara is not talking about that. Shankara is saying reverse that. Your normal status should be I am Brahman. And when you want to interact with the world, at that point, you go outside and put on your chappal and interact and then come back. So instead of remaining in I am this body mind complex and occasionally saying I am Brahman, you should be saying I am Brahman all the time. And only at the point of interaction, you should be putting on the body identification. It is the other way around.
So Raviji, I also feel that what you're saying is internally you are Aham, I'm Brahman, and externally you do all your duties.
Yes.
And also this effort of so is there an effort where you have to put in, try to remind yourself that I am Brahman, like how you said Nirvana Shatakam or chanting of all these
Is there an effort you have to put, remember that you are Mangala? No.
No, yes, right?
When
Yeah.
that is as easily replaced by I am Brahman, then you are achieving something.
Yes. And yes, you're right. It's not easy.
Yeah. This, as long as you say I am Mangala, you have got body identification.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, Raviji.
Yeah.
It means if you remove Raga Dvesha from your life, so then there won't be any worry in your life.
Very good. Excellent. Now, how do we go around removing Raga Dvesha is the question.
Stop expecting. Again, you are Brahman.
See, all this is currently aimed at a seeker, right? So a seeker is a sadhaka. As long as you're a sadhaka, you have a mind which has got expectations. So to think that the mind will be free from expectations is to lay down a foundation of very weak foundation for your sadhana. You have to understand that yes, my mind will have expectations. My mind will have ragadvesha. As a sadhaka, all I can do is, before I act at any point of time, I need to invoke my intellect and say that this action which I'm about to do, is it permitted by Shastra? So that is
Then
how
again,
you,
this,
it's not that you don't have Ragadvesha, it is that your actions are free from Ragadvesha. That is the difference.
then again, you have to practice FIR.
All the time. Jivan Mukti is not, a part-time job. You have the Aham Brahmasmi activity has to be there 24/7. Only when you are going, if you have that 24/7 attitude, then and only then, when you are going in for interaction with the world, you can maintain a level of objectivity, a level of dispassion.
It's like, जैसे बचपन में your mother teach you how to eat,
Yes.
and gradually you keep on practicing. And in the dark also, you directly आपका चम्मच मुंह में जाता है. It's
Right.
something like that.
So
You have to keep on practicing.
it's continuously, that thought has to be there that I am Brahman. Aham Brahma Asmi. Only when that thought is completely assimilated. So if I call you in the middle of the night and said, who are you? You will not say I'm Deepa, you will say I'm Brahman. If that happens, yes, then you're assimilated. It's a tall
So
order.
it means ये चीज हम लोग बचपन से practice कर रहे हैं, तो we can practice this.
You can practice this also, but with conviction. So the first thing has to be that you have to be convinced that you're Brahman, which means your Shravanam and Mananam has to be over. Without Shravanam, you will not know that you're Brahman. Without Mananam, you will not, even though Shastran tells you that you're Brahman, you will not be convinced. So once Shravanam and Mananam are over, then you can do the second stage, which is I am Brahman. The practice of I am Brahman, that is what is called Nididhyasana. But that is pointless unless you are thoroughly convinced that you are Brahman.
Om Acharya ji.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, when you're mentioning activities permitted by Shastra.
Yeah.
So essentially, Shastra would have defined a lot of activities, though we've studied that for a seeker, 2 activities have to be, the desire, nemitic and anatic duties have to be done.
Yeah.
But this is a very, I feel that it's a very vast topic. So essentially, if we were to stick to only couple of rules, with regards to what activities are permitted by Shastras, could you please elaborate only on those 2-3? Is it only Dharma Shastra that we need to consider, that it is not harmful for anybody, or I mean, like
Basically, this activity is for a karma yogi. Every activity has to be, there are two qualifications for a karma yogi. It has to be, dedicated to the Lord, and you have to receive all the fruits as prasadam from the Lord. That is the meaning of a karma yogi. And yes, Shastra talks about nitya naimitya karmas. So nitya karma includes everything. Strictly speaking, nitya karma is only that which is prescribed by the Veda, because for a grahastha there are certain activities, for a brahmachari there are certain activities, for a vanaprastha there are certain activities. But if you're going to stick to that only, then you're going to have a lot of confusion. So we can expand that to your daily activity, any activity which you do, provided that it is not harmful to anybody else.
Thank you, Acharya.
So Anu is asking whether it is true that only she is Brahman or whether everybody else is also Brahman. What is the answer to that?
Everyone's Brahman.
What is the problem with I am Brahman only?
You're identifying with your...
No, if you are saying I am Brahman, then you are saying others are not Brahman. So
Correct.
there is a problem with that, right? Because Brahman is the very consciousness principle. So Sarvam Brahman is the right thing, out of which you further, assimilated, say that I am Sarvam, I am everything, and therefore I am Brahman. That is the first step is, yes, everything is Brahman. The second step is that I am everything. And the third step is, therefore I am Brahman. That's what I mean by Mananam. Tattvamasi is telling you that you are Brahman. But you should ask after that, Tattvamasi, if I am Brahman, what about the chap next door? Is he also Brahman? That kind of thing. That is the Maranam process.
Om Raviji, one more question. So once you are in this Nididhyasanam, state of Nididhyasanam, and if you have to pray, right? If you have to pray, so whom do you pray to? I mean, now we pray to Ishvara, but once you know that you are Brahman, and if there's a situation where you have to pray for somebody or for something,
Then you are not Brahman anymore.
okay.
The moment, see, as a Jnani, you should be aware of the fact that you are Brahman.
Mhm.
But you should be aware of the fact that you are living in Vyavaharika, in a transactional world. You means the body-mind complex which you are occupying,
Mhm.
as well as the body-mind complex of the other people. They are all in a transactional world. So the Jnani will not have any prayers for himself because he knows he is not the body-mind complex. But he is compassionate, and therefore he knows that others do not have that knowledge. The others may have problems, and therefore the prayers can be for others. And if you are doing a prayer, then you as a Jnani are not capable of doing anything for others because of the limitation of your Upadhi.
Mhm.
It is not that others are not Brahman and you are not Brahman. You are Brahman, but you are not the same as Ishvara.
Mm.
Why? Because Ishvara, the Upadhi is unlimited. For you, the Upadhi is a single body.
Mm.
The single body is a finite body. With that limitation of that body, there is nothing you can do for anybody excepting pray.
Mm.
But without the limitation of the body, with the limitless infinite body of Ishvara, and therefore the Jnani with his Upadhi
Mhm.
prays to the same consciousness but with a limitless body, that is Ishvara.
I
Prayer
didn't-
means you are in Dvaitam, you are in duality, Jnani and Lord.
Okay. Yeah, I think I need to do more mananam on this.
Lot more mananam on that, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Om Raviji.
Yeah.
That means when we are Brahman, then we don't need to pray or do anything. Is it correct?
The question is here that to pray,
Yeah.
what do you need?
You need some desire, something to pray for. So that should not be there.
What is the meaning of pray? You need a mind to pray.
Yes.
The moment you've got a mind, you are a Jivatma.
Okay.
So the
Beautiful.
main
Thank
question here
Hmm.
to be constantly
Hmm.
thought about is when I say I, what do I mean?
Hmm.
Do I mean I Brahman or do I mean I with the body? Do I mean the OC or do I mean the RC? If I mean the OC, then the OC is not capable of anything.
Hmm.
If I mean the RC capable of all actions including prayer.
Okay.
So that's what Ramana Maharshi said. Who am I?
Hmm.
Ask yourself, who are you? This I when you use, what are you using it as? RC or OC?
Okay.
So, but
Thank you.
so the correct way would be like knowing that I am OC, but as an RC, I do continue the prayer because in the ashram also we pray. There's always a daily aarti and everything. So obviously we're not contradicting prayers.
No, we are not contradicting prayers. We are saying that a Jnani also prays. As a RC, he prays, but for the benefit of the world. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha. That is the crucial prayer for a Jnani. Jnani does not say, give me freedom from my cough and cold.
Okay, yes.
Raviji, sorry, could you
Yeah.
please help me with the abbreviation of OC and RC? I have missed this out.
You have not done Tattva Bodha?
No, I just completed my TTC and this is my first class.
It's
This is
very
Ruben.
complicated. OC is original consciousness. RC is reflected consciousness. Yes.
All right.
They are all concepts which will come out very clearly in Tattva Bodha.
Thank you.
All right. So with this, we'll stop for the day. Thank you for your patience, and we'll see you next week. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya
Purnasya
Purnamadaya
Purnamadaya
Purnam Eva Vasishyate.
Vasishyate.
Om
Om
Shanti
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 Shanti.
Om Tat
Thank you,
Sat.
Ji. Thank
Om
you.
Namah Shivaya.
Thank you
so
so
much.
much,
Thank you so much.
Acharya.